My parents demanded, "Get out in 72 hours, we're giving your apartment to your brother as his wedding gift." So I agreed politely, moved out immediately, and 2 days later they discovered I'd been the landlord all along and had sold the entire building to a developer who kicked them all out. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, say hello below, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support truly means everything. Let's continue. I stood in my apartment doorway, staring at my mother's face while her words echoed in my ears like a death sentence. 72 hours, Judith. That's all you get. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding like some corporate enforcer. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. My younger brother Adrian shifted uncomfortably beside them, but he didn't speak up. He never did. "You're joking," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my heart hammering against my ribcage. The afternoon light streaming through the window behind me cast long shadows across their faces, making them look like strangers. Maybe they always were. "Do we look like we're joking?" Mom snapped, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer purse. "Adrian is getting married in 3 months. He and Tiffany need a place to start their lives together. This apartment is perfect for them." I glanced around the space I'd called home for 5 years. The exposed brick I'd spent weekends restoring. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook my grandmother's recipes. The window seat where I'd cried, laughed, and rebuilt myself after my divorce. "This is my home," I whispered. "It's family property," Dad interjected, his voice cold and final. "And family takes care of family. Adrian is starting a new chapter. You've had your turn." The way he said it made my stomach turn. Like I was some expired product taking up valuable shelf space. Like the years I'd spent here, the rent I'd paid faithfully every single month, meant absolutely nothing. "I've been paying rent here for 5 years, I said, forcing myself to breathe slowly. My hands trembled slightly, so I shoved them into my pockets. The familiar scent of my vanilla candles mixed with the sharp perfume Mom always wore, creating a nauseating combination. $1,500 every month. Never missed a payment. Never been late. Adrian finally spoke, his voice weak and apologetic. "Come on, sis, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You know how important this is for me and Tiffany. We need to start fresh somewhere nice." Something inside me cracked. Start fresh? Adrian, you're 26 years old. You've never held a job for more than 8 months. You still have Mom doing your laundry. The words poured out before I could stop them, years of resentment bubbling to the surface like lava. "And now you want my home as a wedding gift? How dare you?" Mom's voice cut through the air like a whip. Her face flushed red, that vein on her forehead pulsing the way it always did when she was angry. "After everything we've done for you. We gave you this place when you were going through your divorce, when you had nothing. And this is the gratitude we get." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that surprised even me. "Gave me? I've paid $90,000 in rent over 5 years, Mom. $90,000. The confrontation triggered something deep in my memory, pulling me back 7 years to my grandmother's funeral. I was standing in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she taught me to make peach cobbler every Sunday. My mother had pulled me aside, her face softer than, almost kind. "Your grandmother left you something," she'd said, pressing a manila envelope into my hands. "But you need to be smart about this, baby girl. Don't let anyone know what's inside. Not even your husband." The way she'd emphasized, "Not even your husband," should have been my first warning. But grief had clouded my judgment, made me trust where I shouldn't have. Inside that envelope were property deeds, bank statements, and a handwritten letter from Grandma. "Judith, baby, I've watched your mama treat you like second best your whole life. This building, these properties, they're yours. All of it. Make something of yourself. Don't let anyone diminish your light." Her words were written in shaky cursive, probably one of the last things she'd ever written. The building. The same building where I now stood, arguing with my parents about an apartment I'd secretly owned all along. Grandma had left me not just this unit, but the entire 4-story brownstone in the historic district. 8 units total. Prime real estate. I'd kept it quiet during the divorce, transferred it into an LLC with a lawyer Grandma had recommended. My ex-husband never knew. Back in the present, I looked at my parents with new eyes. They had no idea. For 5 years, I'd played the role of grateful daughter, collecting rent from myself through my property management company, letting them believe they owned this place. The irony was almost beautiful. My father continued his lecture, oblivious to the truth. We've decided to give you 3 days to pack your things and find somewhere else to go. That's more than generous, considering your family. We could have just changed the locks. His words were clinical, businesslike, as if he were firing an underperforming employee rather than displacing his daughter. I tilted my head studying them both. My mother's Chanel suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. My father's Rolex caught the light, gleaming, expensive and cold. Adrian stood there in his Supreme hoodie and Jordan sneakers, looking everywhere except at me. They all looked so certain, so righteous in their cruelty. Okay, I said simply. The word hung in the air like smoke. They'd expected a fight, tears, begging. My mother's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Okay, she repeated. Just like that. Just like that, I confirmed, my voice steady now, almost serene. A strange calm had settled over me, the kind of clarity that comes when you finally see people for exactly who they are. You want me out in 72 hours? I'll be out in 48. The next morning I called my lawyer, Raylan Copeland, a sharp woman in her 60s who'd been handling grandma's affairs for decades. Raylan, it's time, I said, standing by my window watching the city wake up. The sunrise painted everything gold and pink, beautiful and bittersweet. I want to sell the building. Find me a developer who can close fast and who won't negotiate existing leases. Are you sure? Raylan's voice was careful but knowing. She'd watched my family dynamics play out through legal documents for years. Once you do this, there's no going back, sweetheart. I thought about my mother's face, the casual cruelty in her dismissal. The way my father had looked through me like I was invisible. Adrian's weak apologies that meant nothing without action. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Within 6 hours, Raylan had 3 developers interested. By evening, I had a cash offer from Sullivan Development Group for $3.2 million, closing in 14 days. They specialized in historic renovations and had a reputation for maximizing property values. They also had a policy of not honoring previous lease agreements with family discount arrangements. I spent the next 36 hours methodically packing my life into boxes. Each item I wrapped felt like shedding skin, preparing for metamorphosis. My neighbor, Mrs. Haney from Unit 3, knocked on my door holding a casserole. I heard your family was here yesterday, she said gently. The walls are thin, baby. You okay? I loaded the last box into my U-Haul at dawn on day 2, exactly 48 hours after the ultimatum. The building was quiet, everyone still sleeping. I'd found a beautiful loft across town, bigger and brighter than this place had ever been. It was mine completely, no ghosts, no history, no family entanglements. Just clean white walls waiting for my future. Before I left, I slipped envelopes under each tenant's door. Inside was a letter explaining that the building had been sold, that they'd need to work directly with the new management company, and that all previous arrangements were void. I'd included the developer's contact information and my lawyer's number. Mrs. Haney would be fine, her lease was standard and legal. The young couple in Unit 6 would be okay too. But Units 1, 2, and 7, where my parents and various extended family members lived under sweetheart deals and handshake agreements. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about assumptions. My parents paid $800 for a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood where market rate was $3,000. They'd been living off my grandmother's generosity, filtered through my silence for years. I sat in the U-Haul, keys in the ignition, looking up at the building one last time. For stories of red brick and white trim, window boxes my grandmother had planted decades ago. It had been my inheritance, my safety net, my secret. Now it was just a transaction. I turned the key and the engine rumbled to life. My phone started ringing within hours. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was the absolute radio silence for the first 3 days. I unpacked my new loft, arranged furniture, painted an accent wall deep emerald green. Each day I waited for the explosion, knowing it was coming, savoring the quiet before the storm. My best friend Brielle came over on day 4, carrying Thai food and wine. "Girl, you're too calm," she said, studying my face. "I know you, Judith. Something's going on. We'd been friends since college, through my wedding, my divorce, everything. She knew my tells better than anyone." "Just wait," I said, pouring wine into mismatched glasses I'd found at an estate sale. "Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and letting karma do its work." The wine was crisp and cold, sliding down my throat like liquid courage. Outside my new windows, the city sparkled with evening lights, full of possibility. Brielle raised her glass. "I don't know what you did, but I'm here for it. Your mama has been calling me, by the way, asking if I know where you moved to." The way she said it, eyebrows raised, made me laugh. My mother had never liked Brielle, always thought she was too outspoken, too independent, too much of a bad influence. Which was exactly why Brielle was my favorite person. "What did you tell her?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I told her I mind my business and maybe she should try it sometime." The call came on day 12 at 6:47 in the morning. My mother's number flashed on my screen, and I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello." My voice was sleep-rough but steady. I'd been awake anyway, watching sunrise paint my new walls pink and gold. "What did you do?" My mother's voice was strangled, barely controlled. In the background I could hear my father yelling at someone, his voice sharp and frantic. "What the hell did you do, Judith?" I sat up slowly, pulling my blanket around my shoulders. "I moved out," I said calmly. "Like you asked. 48 hours, remember? I was even early." "Don't play stupid with me," she hissed. The venom in her voice was palpable, seeping through the phone line like poison. "We got a letter from Sullivan Development Group. They say we have 30 days to vacate. They say all previous lease agreements are void. They say," her voice cracked, "they say the building was sold." I let the silence stretch between us, thick and heavy. Through my window I watched a bird land on the fire escape, preening its feathers in the morning light. "Yes," I finally said. "It was sold. To Sullivan." "I sold it." "You sold what?" "This isn't your building to sell." My father had grabbed the phone, his voice booming and authoritative like always. "This is family property. Your grandmother left it to me," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "All of it. The entire building. Grandma left it to me 7 years ago, Dad. I've owned it this whole time." The phone went silent. I could hear breathing, ragged and shocked, but no words. Finally my mother's voice came back, smaller now, confused. "That's not possible. We've been collecting rent from the tenants. We've been managing the property." "You've been collecting rent from a property management company I hired." I explained, each word precise and measured. "A company I own. Every dollar you thought you were making, that was my money. My inheritance. You were just middlemen skimming administrative fees I allowed you to keep." I heard something crash in the background. Glass shattering. My father cursing. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel wasn't there. Instead there was just hollow emptiness, like staring into a canyon. "Why?" my mother finally whispered. "Why would you do this to us? To your brother? You gave me 72 hours to leave my home," I said, my voice breaking slightly despite my best efforts. "You didn't ask if I had somewhere to go. Didn't care if I could afford it. You just wanted me gone so you could gift my apartment to Adrian. You made me feel small and worthless and disposable." "But we're family," she said, the words sounding hollow even to her. "Family takes care of family. You said it yourself." I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. "You're right. Family should take care of family. Grandma knew that. That's why she left everything to me. Because she watched you treat me like a backup plan my whole life. Adrian was the golden child. I was just the responsible one who cleaned up messes and asked for nothing." Adrian called next, his voice panicked. "Judith, please. Tiffany's family is already judging me. If we lose this apartment, if they find out we don't have a place for after the wedding." He was crying, actually crying, and I felt something twist in my chest. "You mean if they find out you're not as established as you pretended to be?" I asked, softening slightly despite myself. Adrian had always been weak, not cruel. Just weak and spoiled and enabled. Adrian, you're 26. You should be building your life, not having it handed to you. I know, he sobbed. I know, okay? But Judith, I can't. This wedding cost $60,000. Tiffany's dress alone was $8,000. Her parents think I'm some kind of real estate heir. If this falls apart, she'll leave me. Her dad will make sure I never work in finance again. The desperation in his voice was real, raw, human. For a moment, I remembered us as kids, playing in Grandma's backyard before everything got complicated. Before Mom started comparing us, before Dad started playing favorites. Then maybe you shouldn't have built your life on lies, I said quietly. Maybe you should have told Tiffany the truth about who you are. Please, he whispered. Please, there has to be something you can do. Some way to fix this. I'm begging you, sis. I closed my eyes, exhausted suddenly. The building is sold, Adrian. It closes in 2 days. Sullivan owns it. Even if I wanted to undo this, I can't. It's done. They showed up at my new loft 2 days later, all of them. My parents, Adrian, even Tiffany in her designer athleisure looking like she'd stepped out of an Instagram filter. My doorman called up asking if I wanted to let them in. I almost said no. Almost. But something made me agree. They stood in my living room, looking around at my new space with barely concealed judgment. My mother's eyes lingered on the exposed pipes, the industrial fixtures, the art I'd hung. This is what you left us for? She said, disdain dripping from every word. This warehouse. This is what I chose for myself, I corrected, standing tall. Without asking anyone's permission. Without needing anyone's approval. This is mine. Tiffany spoke for the first time, her voice sharp and entitled. Do you have any idea what you've done? Our wedding is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. We have 60 people coming. We were supposed to host a post-wedding brunch in that apartment. Now Adrian's parents are being evicted like common criminals. Something in me snapped. Common criminals? Your future mother-in-law demanded I leave my home with 72 hours notice. She didn't ask where I'd go or if I could afford it. She just wanted me gone. And you, I looked at Tiffany directly, you didn't even know I existed until this became inconvenient for you. So don't talk to me about family. My father stepped forward, his face red. We raised you better than this. This vindictiveness, this cruelty, this isn't who you are. No, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. You raised me to be convenient. To be quiet. To fix problems and never create them. You raised me to accept scraps while Adrian got everything. Years of pain poured out, unstoppable now. When I graduated top of my class, you threw Adrian a bigger party for finishing his bachelor's degree, barely 3 years late. When I bought my first car with my own money, you bought him a BMW for his 21st birthday. When my marriage fell apart, you told me to try harder. When Adrian's girlfriend left him because he cheated, you blamed her. My mother's face had gone pale. That's not fair. We loved you both equally. Equally. The word tasted like ash. Mom, I've been invisible my whole life. The responsible daughter who never caused problems. And you know what? I kept myself invisible even after Grandma died. I could have told you about the inheritance. Could have kicked you all out years ago. But I didn't. I paid for property management, covered maintenance costs, let you all live cheaply because despite everything you're still my family. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. And the moment you thought you had power over me, you tried to throw me out like garbage. So no, Dad, you didn't raise me to be this. You forced me to become this. Adrian sank onto my couch, head in his hands. Tiffany stood frozen, probably recalculating her entire relationship. My parents just stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. They left without another word. No apologies, no understanding, just wounded pride and shattered expectations walking out my door. I watched them go from my window, for people getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared around the corner. The Sullivan deal closed the next day. $3.2 million in my account, the building no longer mine, the bridge completely burned. Adrian's wedding happened. I know because Brielle showed me the Instagram posts. Smaller venue, fewer guests, Tiffany's smile not quite reaching her eyes. They found an apartment eventually, one they actually paid market rate for. My parents moved to a suburb an hour away, somewhere cheaper, somewhere they could afford on their actual income. The family group chat I'd been removed from continued without me, life moving on. 6 months later, I opened my own architectural firm, something I'd dreamed about for years but never had the capital to start. The money from the building made it possible. I hired 3 employees, took on projects I believed in, created something meaningful from the ashes of my old life. But success felt hollow sometimes, especially during holidays, especially when I drove past the old neighborhood. I saw my grandmother in dreams sometimes. She'd smile at me, proud but sad, understanding what her gift had cost me. "Sometimes freedom is expensive, baby girl," she'd say. And I'd wake up crying because she was right. I was free from toxic family dynamics, from being undervalued, from living small to make others comfortable. But freedom meant loneliness. It meant empty chairs at Thanksgiving, silent birthdays, achievements celebrated with only friends who chose me rather than family who should have loved me. The moral they don't tell you in these stories? Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. And that's okay. It has to be. Because the alternative, staying small, staying quiet, accepting crumbs, that would have killed me slowly. I chose the quick, brutal cut instead. Still hurts. But at least I can breathe. At least when I look in the mirror, I recognize the woman staring back at me. Sometimes I drive past the old building. It's been completely renovated now, beautiful and expensive, everything Grandma dreamed it could be. The new tenants are young professionals, artists, people building their lives. And I think about how inheritance isn't just about money or property. It's about the lessons we carry, the patterns we break, the cycles we refuse to continue. Grandma gave me more than a building. She gave me permission to value myself. Some days that feels like enough. Other days I still cry. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional real-life tales. Have you ever had to choose between family and self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. Let's support each other through these difficult experiences. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival.